everybody, it's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for my February reading wrap-up. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking you through all the books that I read in February. I'm going to start with my stats for the month, and I'm going to actually put the stats on the screen, hopefully in a nice pretty way, just to make it a little bit more interesting for you rather than for me to kind of just reel them off. So let's start with how many books I read, how many pages that equaled, which I haven't even added up. Bear with. Okay. I'm back. I have calculated that information now. So the amount of books that I read and the amount of pages that I read 5.5 books because I DNF'd one book. So I read 5 books complete and read half of one book. I read 1,800 pages, which is including the half DNF'd book that I half read. So yeah, that's the beginning. Sorry. Okay. Let's dive in now to some of the different things I'm trying to track to do with diversity and things like that. So I am tracking this year how many LGBTQIA+ books. I'm also tracking BIPOC authors, so Black, Indigenous, person of colour authors. I am tracking how many books written by Australian authors I've read and also Australian Indigenous authors. And I'm also tracking how many translated books I have read and also how many books were not inspired by Western philosophy, ideology, religion, etc. Also, sorry, I did decide at the beginning of the year that I wanted to try and further my teaching knowledge and read books to do with teaching, but I haven't done that yet, so that's still the plan. Hopefully I'll pick that up. So there's nothing for that in February. I did read one book that had LGBTQIA+ rep. I read one book, or half read a book, by a BIPOC author. I didn't read any books by an Australian author, which means there were no books by Australian Indigenous authors. I read one book that was translated into English, and I did not read any books that were non-European inspired. Then in terms of the format of books that I read 5 physical books, I didn't read any ebooks, and I read half an audiobook. So the book that I DNF'd, I did listen to on audio. In terms of categories, so young adult, middle grade, etc., I read, again, half a young adult book. I didn't read any middle grade, and I read 5 adult books. I also didn't read any comic or graphic novel. That probably should have been in with the physical, etc. One of the books was on my owned physical TBR, and 2 of the books that I read were rereads. Moving into categories, I have a number of different categories that I'm tracking this year. So I have fantasy, I have historical fantasy because I've read quite a few of those last year and I feel like I'm probably going to continue. Historical fiction, sci-fi/dystopian, paranormal/fabulism, contemporary/literary fiction, romance, dark academia/horror and gothic, thriller/mystery, non-fiction and classics. So for fantasy, I read one book. For historical fantasy, I read one book. Didn't read any historical fiction this month. I read one sci-fi/dystopian. I didn't read any paranormal/fabulism. I read one contemporary/literary fiction. I didn't read any romances this month. I read one dark academia, etc. And I didn't read any thrillers or mysteries. So those were the genres. And also no non-fiction or classics. My star breakdown, I had one DNF, as I mentioned. I didn't have any 2 stars. I had 2 books that I rated 3 or 3.5 stars, 1 book that I rated 4 or 4.5 stars, and 2 books that I rated 5 stars. Now, I also do average these out. So for my star average, my average rating was 4.3, which is pretty amazing, I do believe. I use Corpile, which is the rating system created by G over at Book Roast, and I will link her channel along with anyone else that I mention in the description for you to go and check them out, subscribe, etc. So I also do average out my Corpile ratings, although I don't keep track of the Corpile ratings in the yearly statistics, but I can refer you to what they were when I'm talking about the actual books. So my Corpile average was 8 was 8, which is amazing. I'm incredibly, incredibly happy with that, especially given that I had a DNF. So let's start with our DNF, shall we? So my DNF was The Hurricane Wars by Thea. I cannot remember Thea's surname, I apologise. The cover will be up here somewhere so you can see what the person's surname is. So The Hurricane Wars, this is the book that I listened to on audio, and it is also the book that was young adult. I read half of it for Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany's Patreon book club. I didn't manage to watch or join in on the live show because it started early in the morning for me, which is fair enough. Bethany lives in New York, you know, doesn't always work out time-wise for us. And I haven't yet watched it back, although I will do at some point. I DNF'd this book because I really just wasn't connecting to it. I wasn't particularly engaged by the characters. I wasn't particularly engaged by the romance. I found it a little bit too, not insta-love, but insta-interest, insta-attraction. It's apparently a Raylo, I think is how people are saying it, a Raylo fan fiction, or that's how it kind of started its life. So that is Kylo Ren and Rey from some of the more recent Star Wars. That's not my ship, particularly. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with it if that's what you're into, but it's not something that I'm particularly interested in. I don't really follow that as a thing. So that wasn't something I was particularly interested in. I only found that out because of the discussion in Discord for that. So it really didn't kind of make that much of a difference going into the book, but I could sort of see where that was, how that fitted in, and yeah, it just didn't particularly interest me. However, I do think that I probably gave this book a little bit of a disservice because I listened to it on audio, and if you've been around for any length of time, you know that audio is not my preferred method of reading. I tend to prefer to read either non-fiction or something like potentially a mystery or something like a romance or a contemporary. Now you'd think non-fiction, maybe not so much, but I really like it when the author narrates their own book. So that particularly works for memoirs. I did also read a few others via audio, which I did really enjoy, but I found that I needed to give a lot of time to those books. So it's probably best for me to listen to audiobooks for romance, contemporary, and cozy mysteries, like Agatha Christie, because I feel like those are the sorts of books that I can only be sort of listening to and not have to be trying to focus on other things. I'm not super good at listening to an audiobook while I do other things. It depends on the things. If I'm cleaning the house, going for a walk, going on a long drive or something like that, then I can absolutely do that. It's not a problem. But anyway, fantasy, which is what this is not a great fit for me with audiobooks. However, it was the only way that I could get access to the book bar buying it, and because I didn't know really that much about it and whether it was something I was interested in, I didn't particularly want to buy it. So yeah, I listened to it, which may have been a disservice because I just wasn't connecting, but I think I potentially wasn't connecting because I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been to be able to connect. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. I will also listen to the Patreon discussion so that I can get some idea of what people thought of it. I know Bethany actually quite liked it. A couple of people in the comments who really enjoyed it in the discussion. So let me know in the comments below if you've read the book, if you think I should give it a try physically, or if you think that maybe just don't worry about it. You might like it better physically, but you won't necessarily think it's amazing. And I won't pick it up, but it's a malleable DNF. I'm willing to reconsider my DNF, but it's not like a soft DNF. But if you think I will enjoy it, please let me know. So that was my DNF. That was The Hurricane Wars. I don't give it a rating other than a DNF. So that's that. All right, moving on to the rest of the books that I read in the month that I actually did read. I always do the reviews in the order in which they got written into the journal, which isn't necessarily the order that I read them. So yeah. Anyway, the first book that I want to talk to you about today is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This was actually also the first book that I read in the month. I buddy read this with my friend Michelle. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I do think the book may have been a little bit let down by hype because this book was really, really hyped up last year. And when was it published? 2023. So last year when it first came out, it was really hyped up. People were absolutely loving it, calling it their favourite book of the year, saying it was a masterpiece, incredible. The person that actually sold it to me said the same. She said it was her favourite book ever. So I think I was a little bit let down by all of that because, as you know, sometimes when a book is incredibly hyped, if you don't love it as much as you then expect to love it, it is a letdown. So it's not necessarily the book's fault. What is this book about? This is a literary fiction, and we follow two people who become friends when they are children, and we follow them throughout their lives and how they remain friends and their interactions with each other. When they are children, they meet in a hospital ward because one of the main characters has been in a car accident and the other main character, her sister, is ill. And so they meet and they form this friendship, and then something happens that kind of breaks the friendship, but then years later when they're off at college, they run into each other and they're both, I don't remember what the male character is actually studying at university. I don't think he's studying gaming actually, but the female main character is studying gaming, computer gaming and creation at university. And the main character, Sam, is interested in, he's always loved computer games and he's interested in creating a computer game, and he thinks that Sadie, the main female character, would be excellent to make a computer game with. So they get together and make a computer game, and then they make a company and things happen, and it's about their friendship and their relationship and their relationships with other people, and it's about trauma, it's about growing up, it's about how people interact with each other, yeah, all of those sorts of things. I think the best thing about this book was the characters. I thought they were well written, they were very nuanced. You could definitely see that they had flaws and that they also they were well-rounded people. They had flaws, they had good bits, they were stubborn, they were stupid, they were funny, they were interesting, they were all the things that a person is. So I thought that was really well done. That was definitely my favourite part. All of the characters that had any kind of voice I thought were really well drawn. The main characters particularly so. In general, I enjoyed the book. Like I said, I did give it a 6.43 on Callpile, which makes 3.5 stars. The main thing for me that let this down was, well, two things. Firstly, I think it's a little long. I don't think it needs to be almost 500 pages long. There was quite a lot of stuff that was kind of belaboured a little bit and that you really didn't need quite as much description about, particularly to do with the creation of the games. Although that was interesting, it just felt like it didn't need to be this long. But there were a couple of bits where the characters were interacting in the game and you were actually reading as though you were reading a game playing. And it just didn't work for me. Those bits didn't work for me because it was right near the end of the book, and I can sort of understand why the author did it, because there were certain things happening that the people weren't really dealing with very well, but it just felt out of place. The rest of the book didn't have that. I think if the rest of the book had had those bits in the same way, it wouldn't have felt quite so jarring and drawn you out of the book. But that's just my experience, obviously. Other people may have enjoyed that, and I definitely can understand why. Like I said, there were things going on that people weren't necessarily dealing with very well, so perhaps that was the point, was to kind of drag you out of the story and make you kind of confront some of what was happening. I don't 100% know. But yeah, that was how I felt about this one. It was definitely a book that I enjoyed, but it wasn't a book that I loved. Gave it 3.5 stars. I don't know whether I will reread this, and I'm not sure whether I'll keep it, because if other people love it so much, it might be better off not being on my shelves. But I'll have a think and let you know. But yeah, that's that. Next up we have Bunny by Mona Awad. I read this for a reading vlog which will be coming out hopefully sometime towards the middle or after the middle of March. So I won't go into a huge amount of detail about Bunny. I am looking at what I gave it in Callpile and therefore the star rating that I gave it, and I actually gave it a higher rating than I did Tomorrow. And I don't realistically think that that's accurate. I think because of the way Core Pile breaks things down, and the idea being that you think about each individual concept, so how were the characters written, what was the plot like, etc. And I definitely think that Mona Awad has a very unique and very interesting writing style, and I think that she's very intelligent and very good writing. But it was very weird, and I didn't really understand anything. I didn't really understand what the point really was at all, or what happened, or what was true, or what wasn't true. In terms of enjoyment, that is probably where I should have lowered the rating a little bit, because I don't think that I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, because I was very confused and the ending was unsatisfying. So I've given it a 6.71, which is 3.5 stars as well, but I'm going to have a little figure around with the numbers, and I'm going to drop the rating to 3 stars. I definitely can see why people enjoy it, and I definitely think it was well written. I definitely can see the intentionality of what was being written. I can definitely see the authorial voice, but I don't quite understand what the point was. So yeah, but anyway, like I said, the video vlog that I read that for will be coming out hopefully soon. So if you want to see my further thoughts on Bunny, then I won't link that because this will go up first, but potentially subscribe and it'll be coming up soon. Anyway, moving on now to the next book that I want to talk to you about, which is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. I am currently doing a read-along of the Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy series with some amazing BookTube friends of mine and other incredible people. We have a Discord where we've been discussing it, and we've been having live shows. I will link all the information that you will need if you'd like to join us. There's still plenty of time to catch up. Each book is only roughly 100 and something, 200 or so pages long, so they're really quick and easy to read. So you definitely will be able to catch up if you wanted to join us for March. We are reading Life, the Universe and Everything. So Restaurant at the End of the Universe is the second book in the series. I won't go into a huge amount of detail about this book, partly because, spoilers, partly because we had quite an in-depth discussion about it on the live show that we did on Ashley from Ashley's Media Addictions channel, so that will be linked below if you want to watch that. But this is a kind of classic sci-fi humour space odyssey, and we follow a few different characters, one of whom is Arthur Dent. Arthur Dent is a human, and in the first book he wakes up and he finds that there is a bulldozer on his doorstep about to bulldoze his house, and of course he's not happy about that and he's trying to stop it, and then his friend Ford Prefect comes along and drags him off to the pub and gets him to drink a couple of pints super quickly in the morning, and whilst doing this he tells him that the Earth is actually about to be demolished to make way for a hyperspace bypass, and that he, Ford Prefect, is not from somewhere in the UK like Arthur Dent had been led to believe, but he's in fact from Beetlejuice. And of course Arthur doesn't believe him and doesn't understand what's going on, but then the Vogons, who are a alien race who are incredibly unpleasant even, they start interacting with the Earth and telling them what's going on, and then the Earth is destroyed. Arthur and Ford with Arthur manage to hitch them a ride on the Vogon ships, and then basically the adventure goes from there. They meet up with some other very odd characters, Zaphod Beeblebrox. They meet Trillian, who is another person from Earth. They meet Marvin, who is a paranoid, depressed android, and they go on a range of very interesting adventures, and they find out a lot of interesting stuff about the Earth and the galaxy and who runs the galaxy. Zaphod Beeblebrox is the president of the galaxy, but is he actually the leader of the galaxy? That remains to be seen. So in The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, a number of different things happen, which I had forgotten because the book is called The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and one of the things that they do is they go to the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is a restaurant that has a kind of temporal, I don't know, a temporal bubble, which means that every night the show that is put on for the people at the restaurant is the end of the earth, or end of the galaxy, which is like everything blowing up. But a bunch of other stuff happens. We find out even more about Earth, and yeah, I really, really enjoy the series. I think that it's really funny. I think that it's a really interesting commentary about society and about the way we think, the way we interact with each other. It's very satirical, and I'm really enjoying the reread. We're having some great chats, so if you would like to, like I said, join us, all the information is linked below. For my ratings, I gave this one 8.29 on Corpile, which works out to be 4.5 stars. So then we move into And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrick Backman. This is another book that I read for that same vlog that I was talking about before, that I read Bunny for. So more information about how I felt about that will be coming up in that vlog. Again, stay tuned. I loved this book though, spoiler alert. I thought it was so incredibly moving. I thought that it was so well written. It was so realistic. Yeah, it made me cry. I just thought it was beautiful. It's very short. It's only 80 pages long, I think, or thereabouts. And it is the story of an older man who has dementia. And he starts the story with his grandson and just talking with his grandson. And it's exploring that relationship. It's exploring his other relationships with the boy's father and exploring what's going on for him and his dementia. And I just thought it was amazing. I gave it a 9.29 on Corpile, and that works out to be 5 stars. So like I said, when that vlog goes live, check it out, because you'll get more information about how I felt about that one as well. There is another book that I'm in the middle of, which is why the vlog won't go up for probably a week or two, but it's coming. And then the final book that I read in the month of February was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This was a reread for me. This is part of my reread project that I'm doing this year. So this year I'm trying to reread a bunch of books that I have claimed here on BookTube to be favourites of mine, which I haven't necessarily actually gone back and reread. And I'm or used to be, quite a big rereader. And so for me, a kind of hallmark of a book being a favourite is that I've reread it a bunch of times. But this one I haven't reread, and most of these none of these I've reread. So I really want to kind of test the theory. Are they still favourites, etc. I loved this book. It is definitely still a favourite. I'm incredibly glad that I reread it. I love the writing style. I love the way that it's written. I love the character of Addie. I love the character of Addie and the character of Henry. I love the way we swap backwards and forwards from when Addie makes the deal that she makes to the time, well, I don't know if it's the time that it was actually published. No, it was published in 2020, but it's 2014 is when the present timeline. Just thought it was beautifully written. It was very kind of lyrical writing, not like super purple, but has a very kind of lyrical feel to it, a lyrical style to it. So many different beautiful quotable pages, quotable quotes even, I should say. So this is a book about a young woman called Addie LaRue, and in the 1700s, it starts in 2014, but her journey starts in 1698. And she grows up in a small village in France. Her life is very kind of small. Not a lot is happening in the village. Her father is a woodworker, and her mother doesn't really want her to she wants to accompany her father when he goes to markets outside of the town. Her mother doesn't really want that to happen because she doesn't want Addie to get kind of ideas outside of her station. But Addie does, and she sees a bigger world than Billon, which is the town. As she grows, she befriends this older woman who is kind of, I guess, considered a witch, and she realizes that she doesn't want the life that she's heading towards. She doesn't want to be like her mother. She doesn't want to grow up and get married to some guy she doesn't necessarily even like, spit out a bunch of kids, and yeah, so she doesn't want all those things. And then on the night that she is supposed to marry someone, she is just freaking out, and she's been praying to as many gods as she can think of to try to get them to stop the wedding from happening. On the evening of the wedding, she runs off and she is praying, and she's praying to any god or any spirit that will listen. And while she's doing this, it's basically dusk and it falls to night, and one of the gods that you're not supposed to pray to, one of the gods of night, answers her, and they make a deal. And the deal isn't quite what Addie was expecting, because she's free. She's free to do whatever she wants and she will live forever, but no one ever remembers her. She can't make a mark. She can't say her name. Nothing that she owns stays hers for long. So she finds living very difficult, and she has to learn how to become a liar. She has to learn how to be a thief. She has to learn a lot of different things. It's about her living in this curse and figuring out what is going on. And then we switch back to 2014, the present time, and she's 300 and something years old. So she has developed a way of coping, a way of living, and a way of kind of leaving a mark. Still, people aren't remembering her. And then one day she meets someone who remembers her, and they start to see each other, and it's about what's going on with that. And yeah, like I said, it's beautifully written. Characters are amazing. The writing is amazing. It's really sad. It's really poetic. I just love this book. I think it's so fantastic, and I'm really happy that I reread it. Highly recommend. It is magical realism, I guess, technically, fabulism maybe, historical fantasy, which is what I put it in as, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. Highly recommend. So that's it. That is everything I read. That is all the stats. So that's everything I need to talk to you about today. If you have any thoughts on anything that I talked about today, any of the books that I've read, please comment below and let me know. What was your favourite book that you read in the month of February? I had two favourites. I had The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. I don't yet know which one is actually my favourite. I literally gave them the same rating, core pile 9.29 for both, which is 5 stars for both. So we'll see. Yeah, let me know, what was your favourite book in February? Are there any books that are any way similar to the books that I talked about that you think I might like? Please comment all that in the description below. Comments even below. If you'd like to leave me a comment but you don't know what, then leave me some pretty blue flowers in honour of this cover of Addie LaRue, which I think is just gorgeous. All of my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you'd like to go follow me on any of those other platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.